What is it to be Spursy? It's more than just not winning things. Being Spursy is having the ability to get yourself into positions to succeed and having the inexplicable ability to throw it away through sometimes outrageous levels of self-sabotage. Coming up clutch in the moments that give you the opportunity for triumph, but falling short in the moments that actually matter. It's sacking Jose Mourinho 2 days before a cup final that could have ended a more than a decade wait for a major trophy. It's developing England's greatest all-time national team goalscorer, Harry Kane, and failing to convert a single major trophy. It's Lucas Moura scoring a miraculous second-leg hat-trick, 3-0 down to Ajax in a Champions League semi-final, and then falling flat against Liverpool in the final. But in the early hours of Thursday morning in Australia, Spurs were Spursy no longer, and it's all thanks to our big Ange. A 1-0 win over Manchester United in what must be said was not a very Ange ball game of football. It was cautious, calculated, and exactly what Spurs needed to end their 17-year major trophy drought and etch Big Ange into Tottenham, European and Australian football history. Not that the latter was in any doubt on this episode of the Round Ball Australia podcast. My name is Lachlan, Avil, and joining me on a very, very special day in Australian football is Christian Montegan. Christian, I know you were awake just like me this morning, sinking it all in. As I said, it really wasn't that much of an entertaining game of football at all, but that's not what matters today.
It certainly wasn't, and we didn't expect it, right? I mean, two teams sitting 16th and 17th in the league. It was always classed as, this matchup where it was just going to be so dire to the point where, I saw this tweet on X, I think it was yesterday or the day before, saying this could be the one game in history where both teams lose. Like you just could not see, one team winning this because their form heading into it, especially domestically, was shocking, right? But I think in the Europa League, especially Tottenham have found this formula to drive them forward and give them that extra bit of momentum, and just tweaked a couple of things which we'll get into. But yeah, just obviously a momentous day for Australian football and having an integral part to play in Spurs ending their 17-year trophy drought. It's, quite a story.
Well, to the antithesis of the kind of football that we saw this morning, we are going to go full Ange ball and throw caution to the wind a little bit for this podcast. And I guess Poletti, it's such a big day. He becomes not only the first Australian manager to go and win a European trophy, as I'm sure a lot of people found out today, he's the first non-European or Argentinian manager to do it as well. You think about how much of the world that encompasses. You look at from an AFC perspective, Heung-min Son, who was his captain when he came on, he's the first captain from the AFC as well as Postecoglou as a coach to win from this part of the world. It's just what it represents more than what it is to him personally is so much of the message here.
Yeah, absolutely. I could not believe it. Well, actually, no, let me rephrase that. I could believe it when I woke up this morning. I did not watch this game live, as is long told in the prophecy on this podcast. But when I saw it, I'm just like, yay! I was a lot more enthusiastic than that, but it's just like he's done it. It's happened. The prophecy of second season success has been fulfilled once again by Ange Postecoglou, and honestly, while I was preparing for an interview to do this morning as well, I had the timeline open in the other, sort of looking at it all, and just to see everyone unite in this monumental achievement, because it's, as you said, it's not just an achievement for Ange, it's an achievement for Australian football, and one of the 5 days a year the mainstream media actually remembers football exists.
And I think, Christian, that's one of the reasons why everyone feels so relatable to Ange is because he's been that kind of person throughout his career that has opened doors for others. He's been very public and very self-aware of the fact that he is that kind of spotlight for Australian football. He's opening doors where others didn't for him in the past, and he's been that guy to break through the glass ceiling. And at the end of the day, all you have to do is look at Ruben Amorim's press conference after this game and just realize how finely, the coin toss was balanced here. You're either walking away a hero. I'm not going to use the word clown because I think that was a little bit unfair, but that really was what was going to decide their season. If they won this game, they're a Europa League champion, first European title in over 40 years. If they lose it, they're 17th in the Premier League. And that is the line. And it probably is going to go a long way to determining whether he stays in the job or not as well. But to be on the right side of history, it's funny. Again, we can maybe talk about the football a little bit, but going into this game, that's not what I was thinking about at all. I wasn't thinking about how they were going to set up or where they were going to play their passes or who's better in transition. It was the stories of these two football clubs. And thankfully for us, Ange ended up on the right side of that.
Yeah, I thought the press conference the day before was quite telling, right? You saw Ange, he was under a lot of pressure. The questions he was being asked, he was very much under the pump. And then Manchester United side of things, he had, I think it was Maguire, Bruno Fernandes sitting alongside Amarin, and they were chill, relaxed. The pressure wasn't the same as compared to Tottenham. I think a lot more was riding on this match just from a managerial perspective. As you said, if Ange was to lose this game, it was all but over for him, for his tenure at the club. So whereas Amarin would have had a bit more breathing space, that was the reports coming out, because he only arrived mid-season. So it's only fair to give him a bit more time in the off-season to get his players. For Ange, it's a different story, right? This is his end of his second season. This was absolutely huge. And the way the game panned out, it wasn't classic Ange ball. And I've been sort of one of Ange's critics in a sense that I've been saying he needs to change it up a bit. The Premier League is on a different level to the leagues that he's won at before, which have all been great achievements. I'm not knocking them down in any sense. But the way, especially from the quarterfinals onwards, I thought that game against Frankfurt in the quarters, that was the real turning point for me, especially that second leg away from home. The way they set up defensively, the way they were able to just pick and choose their moments, to go forward. It wasn't always playing a high line, not always pressing at every opportunity. And he said that post-match after the Europa League final today, he said, knockout football is a bit different for me. And I've experienced that back in Australia for South Melbourne, etc., where Australian football is known to play finals football. He's familiar with that setup. So, yeah, for me, that was a real proud moment, because it shows that maybe he isn't as stubborn as we once thought. He always alludes back to the fact that, it's always about doing plan A better. There's no plan B for him. But I think deep down, there is plan B and plan C. There is room for little tweaks in his tactical system, and the players have bought into it 100%. And if he leaves, I think a lot of players will be disappointed. Like Heung-min Son, for example, has come out multiple times and said how much he loves Ange. The players have just bought into his project and what he wants to do. And he's that type of coach who galvanizes players. And you saw that in the final, how they worked for each other and were able to eventually get the job done. It was nervous towards the end, but yeah, United really didn't look like scoring, did they? Even in that last 15-minute period. So yeah, congrats again to Tottenham. Well deserved.
So I have a theory about the sake of his job for next season, and I wrote about this for Ramble Australia website. The ultimate Spursy thing to do, and I talked off the top about the definition of being Spursy and what that is, and Poletti, maybe you can speak to this as someone not too in tune with European football. The kind of idea of being Spursy, obviously they've lost a lot, but it's losing in critical moments, and it's getting yourself into situations and almost just not allowing yourself to fulfill that expectation of success, even though you can get so close but fail so often. And I don't think that losing this final would be the most Spursy outcome of this whole situation. I think the definition of what would be the most Spursy is to win this and get a glimpse into the success and lift a trophy with Ange and have your players all fall in love with him, and most of the supporters, at least for this game. I know there's some that don't want him there next year still, but to have all that momentum and then to say, thank you, Ange, but it's time to say goodbye. And to sack him now and not even give him a chance with a pre-season, with a fit list hopefully going in after a little bit of a rest, and give him absolute minimum, give him a month or two at the start of the season. I know he's been poor in the Premier League, but he's sent it off after January pretty much due to all the injuries. They were not in a good position, and he knew the value of what a trophy could do for this football club. And I think that's another reason why we've seen him change his principles in terms of his actual football a little bit, because today wasn't about playing the Ange ball way. They had a possession count in the 20s or something like that. So I think I saw someone on X saying that is the lowest possession count of a Europa League winner ever on record. It wasn't about playing the Ange ball away today. It was simply about getting a trophy and releasing that mental lock on the Tottenham Football Club. And he says he does want to lead this project going forward, but it's out of his hands to a certain extent.
I mean, it is, but as you said, this probably would be the most Spursy thing that they could do, is to sack Ange now. And, you know, as you said, he did say in his press conference after the game that, you know, they basically washed away the Premier League season in January. Literally, it was Ange, it was the players. They just went, yeah, we're putting all our efforts into the Europa League. And they did, and it paid off. And I've seen a lot of discourse today online from, you know, Spurs fans, and it's like, well, what do you want? Did you want them to try to find success in the Premier League this season, fail miserably, miss European competition altogether, or win a trophy and qualify for the Champions League anyway? They're doing top four would have done. Like, what is it that you actually want? Or do you just want to be contrarian for the sake of being contrarian? Because if it's the latter, then shut up. Please. No one needs to hear what you have to say. And I'm all for, you know, spinning a narrative to suit exactly what I want, you know, the outcome that I want, because I do it quite a lot, you know, when I guide directions on football in this country. But, you know, like, genuinely, what is it that these fans want? Is it, you know, do you want trophies? We get told winning is the most important thing in football. Well, Ange has done that. He won. And the players love him for it. The players love him. Like, I would run through a brick wall for exactly one man, and that man is Ange Postecoglou. I've never met the bloke, and just everything I've heard, everything I've seen, like, I saw someone post the trophy lift today on Twitter, and just the fact that he was standing off to the side, had to be there, you know, on the stage because regulations dictate that the coach has to be there on the stage, and he had to be dragged into the middle by the players. He didn't want to be there because he looked at it as all about the players, and the players were like, no, this is all about you, mate. You get in here because we're not here without you right now. And I think that sums up Ange Postecoglou perfectly. Is the players believe in him because he believes in the players, and if he doesn't believe in the players, then the players don't believe in him. And it's culminated in, you know, a first major trophy in nearly 2 decades for Spurs, their first European success in over 4 decades. Like, you to get rid of him now would be absolutely ludicrous, and yet I could absolutely see them doing it, because Daniel Levy will either give in to fan pressure because the fans don't actually know what they want, or Ange will go, this is the budget I need for next season, and Levy goes, no, thank you, we'll get someone in who's willing to operate to the budget that we want to spend. And it's like, you'd be prepared to let a coach hang out to dry over the sake of what, 20 million, 30 million, 40 million dollars, like, or 40 million pounds, like, when Champions League qualification, that's exactly what that nets you. Like, would you literally be prepared to throw away arguably one of the best coaches in the history of your football club over 40 million pounds? It would be insane. And yet we all watched the Tottenham documentary on Amazon. We could absolutely see it happening, right?
Yeah, I did love in the post game when he talks about Daniel Levy's comments, like, Ange is just cashing in the receipts as well, you know, after the game. And he's saying, when Daniel hired me, he said, you know, at Tottenham, we've made a conscious decision to go away from the proven winners, the Jose Mourinho's, I'm blanking, Mauricio Pochettino, the Antonio Conte, those kind of the likes, right? Mm. And, you know, now we've got Ange. And Ange is sitting there going, mate, I'm a serial winner. I win everywhere I go. I win at South Melbourne. I win at Brisbane Roar. I win with Australia. I win with Yokohama. I win with Celtic. And I win with Tottenham as well. And it's the perfect clapback. And I know it's that line that I always win things in my second year. It's gone around the world. Everyone's used it. We used it in a lot of our media today as well. I actually think, this is my personal opinion on it, I just think it comes from a slight misuse in language, where Ange was clearly trying to say that so far in his career, he's won every 2 years. But the way he phrased it made it seem like he was anticipating a trophy was going to come. And this is where some of the confusion has been born from. But it's just such a sick line in retrospect. And you saw James Maddison, his tweet is going brah after the game, and the players have got that sign with the the sunglasses on Ange, and the quote is, I always win things. I don't usually, I always win things in my second season. And just for that to pay off the way it has, I think it's completely accidental, Christian, on Ange's behalf. But it's one of the coldest lines in football now.
I had the same opinion back when he said it in September. I thought, how are the media portraying this as he expects to win something in his second season this season? I think he was referring to in years past where he's been at different clubs and he's won something in his second season. So obviously the media gave it that bit of spin, and the fans sort of bought into it. And that was a lot of the criticism this season, because essentially at the end of the day, Ange was a laughing stock up until this point, because they were referring to that quote, after every single game, Tottenham are never going to win a trophy. What are you talking about, Ange? And now he gets to, like you said, keep the receipts. And it's just great that he's been able to pull this off, because if you think about it, right, last season, it's just funny how fate works in different ways. So England had 4 Champions League spots, right? Tottenham finished 5th. Had England have had 5 spots last season, they would have been in the Champions League. None of this would have happened, right? They wouldn't have been the Europa. Very likely that Tottenham wouldn't have won the Champions League. Let's be real. And it's just funny how it's worked in this way. And they called last season a failure, right? Ange alluded to it a few weeks ago. It's like, I can't win with you guys. We finished 5th last season. This season, whoever's 5th, they're copping no criticism, but Tottenham do. So Ange just had to, really had to fight against the media every single time after game, after each press conference, and to finally get the reward that he deserves after all his efforts. It's just, great. And obviously from an Australian fan perspective, everyone back at home getting up in the early hours of the morning to support. And he mentioned that as well post-game. He knows the closest people to him that have really believed in him from the get-go, and those are for them, right? It's for the people who believe in Australian football, and that's why it's such a big occasion.
I think one of the telling facts as well is the amount of people that woke up to watch the game this morning, not only the people that were Tottenham supporters, but the people that weren't. And to be honest, a lot of Manchester United supporters and Arsenal supporters like myself, I've talked about this on the podcast before, but, if it's not a North London derby, I am full on Ange Postecoglou. It's Ange's team. It's not Tottenham. It's Ange's team. But I'm full on them all the way. And I couldn't stop smiling this morning when I'm watching Australian lift the Europa League trophy. It didn't matter what team it was for. And I think that speaks to how a lot of Arsenal and Manchester United people were feeling this morning as well. There's been some great commentary around it as well. And it goes to show Poletti just the pull that he has and what he's done to inspire a generation of not even footballers, not even coaches, but just people who believe in the game in Australia. And I wonder, we've seen lots of talented footballers go overseas. You think of the Harry Kewells, the Tim Cahills, the Mark Vidukas, the Mark Schwartzes, and be very successful overseas and be the inspiration on a player side of thing. But I wonder what the difference is for someone like an Ange going over, because in a way, being the guy that's led the national team, he's been in the media at different points, he's been a player, he won championships with South Melbourne, and now he's had this amazing coaching journey. He more represents a bit of a holistic outlook of what Australian football is, and the fact that he's being that person, that kind of shining light to say what the potential of Australian football can be, potentially can have a much more massive impact than simply a player going and scoring a bunch of goals in the Premier League.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree with everything you've said. And there was one particular thing I want to pick out there as well. Well, 2 particular things. I'll do the first one first because it's better to the holistic discussion here. Is the fact that this is for Australian football, and one of the other things that I saw across social media this morning, and again, I know social media isn't the be all and end all, but I did see a lot of people now suddenly trying to claim Ange as European because he was born in Greece and that makes him not an Australian manager. And it's like, again, make your mind up. 2 years ago, it was, this is an Australian manager. He's never won anything at this level. He won't do it at this level. He can't do it at this level. He'll be sacked by Christmas. And now all of a sudden that he's won something, it's, we claim him. He's a European. It's like, make your minds up. You don't get to claim him when he's good and decry him when he's absolute garbage.
Greek football as well. But
I'm not saying it's not, but that's not the point they're making. And I would be remiss to say that, yes, no, look, I said this to my co-host on the Dubcast, Burke, today as well. You will never hear me say these words again. But he is a proud Melbourne boy. He's a proud Victorian. He is Australian. You know, I praise the Victorian setup for bringing him through and everything that he's done down there in Victoria. You know, because giving Victorians credit is, not my wheelhouse. He is a Victorian through and through. He's an Australian through and through. And this is Australia's success as much as it is Tottenham's success. And you will never hear me praise Victoria like that again. And then the other thing I wanted to touch on is I can tell you one Manchester United fan who wasn't happy. I ran into my old boss earlier tonight, and one of the first things I said to him was, "Big Ange," and he's like, "Oh, you shut the..." And it's like, "Oh, I guess I'll back away now, and nice to see you again, mate." Look, this is an amazing moment for Australian football, and we've seen so many Australian coaches go overseas to Europe and, for lack of a better term, fail. Muscat didn't. Was it Belgium he went to? He didn't do the best there. He had a stint in Scotland as well, didn't he? It didn't quite end so well.
Not yet.
Tony,
he will.
No, sorry.
He will.
That's right. That's right. Yep. Sorry, I'm getting my people mixed up. Harry Kewell as well. I believe he's gone coaching everywhere and has had an abhorrent record at coaching, almost as bad as Michael Valkanis, but that's a different story.
Tony Popovich failed as well in Europe.
I was literally about to say Tony Popovich has bounced back and forth between Europe and the A-League so often and always comes back with his tail between his legs. And admittedly has taken those lessons and gotten better, and he's doing wonderful things with the Socceroos. Please don't come at me at a press conference, Tony. I do like you. I think you are a good coach. But, you didn't have the best record in Europe, and Ange has just gone from place to place to place to place. And he's won trophies everywhere he's gone. He's had nothing but success everywhere he's gone. He turned Celtic around a 25-point deficit and then won the league and then did the treble and then has come to Tottenham. As you say, Christian, almost qualified for Champions League, ended up Europa League, has won a trophy there. Like, this is a serial winner. This is one of the best coaches that Australia has ever produced. Might arguably be the best coach Australia has ever produced in football. And, just to see, everyone revel in his success. I can only imagine now there's going to be coaches going, well, if Ange can do it, why can't I? And maybe it's not the top heights of European football, but, hopefully this gets people within Europe to start taking Australian football a lot more seriously. And, the passageways open on the coaching side as much as they have on the player side, because, how many times in the last 3 years have we read transfer story of player X goes to Y club in Scotland, right? And that's just been the story, and then that's pathwayed into other parts of Europe. Hopefully we can now see, okay, Coach X has been scouted by Y club in Italy and, Scotland and Spain and Belgium and the Netherlands. And, instead of just a handful of coaches, we've now got, a coach in 6 different continents that's an Australian, because they're buying the Big Ange Kool-Aid. And it's like, well, okay, maybe there's actually something to Australian coaches.
The clearest example that you've missed there is Patrick Kisnorbo as well. Like, I know there was a City football group, but he, for rightly or wrongly, will forever be the first Australian manager to manage in a top 5 European league. And there is a City football group, but does that deal happen without the influence of Ange Postecoglou? And there's been a big shift. Ange doing well. Also, the 2 World Cups, the most recent men's and women's World Cups, has elevated the opinion of the world to Australian football. And I think clearly the next cue off the rat, Christian, is Kevin Muscat. And we're seeing what he's done with Yokohama and obviously Shanghai Port over in China now as well. He's ready-made for that next step in Europe. And it's really exciting that, Ange has specifically opened doors for Kevin, obviously with the Yokohama move as well. And that is something objective, something solid and tangible that Ange is doing, where we can see that this is a direct result of this success.
And I think that's what makes Ange's success so much greater, right? It's because it's not just him focusing on himself. Like, I'm sure he could get better, more established coaches to be in his coaching staff, right? But he's chosen the Australian way to try and bring some of these coaches up. You see someone like Miller Jedinak or Nick Montgomery. Like, Montgomery was coaching the Mariners only a couple of years ago, don't forget, right? So, I mean, to bring someone like that up in the coaching staff, like, how much experience will he get from this tournament, winning a trophy like the Europa League? Like, that's just absolutely priceless, right? So, Jedinak's
I will say just quickly as well, it was another pinch me moment when like they're running subs and it's just like Nick Montgomery talking to Hyun-Min Son, giving him instructions as he's coming on a European final. It's like, what kind of world are we living in,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's just crazy. So it just goes to show how much Ange is invested in the actual growth of Australian football in general. And it's not just, okay, I'm just going to, handpick Nick Montgomery and just hope that he's like, becomes the next big thing. Like, I think he sees potential in these coaches. That's why he selects them. And he's like, okay, you can come on board, come on the journey, learn from me. The same as did with Kevin Muscat at Yokohama. Muscat then took the reins later on, and look what he's doing now, right? He's touted as, a potential coach for a European club now. So I think opening doors like that is just another aspect of why we love Ange and the work he's doing, right? So, it's just brilliant to see. Hopefully we do get more coaches like Ange coming through, and that obviously starts with the grassroots coming through to the A-League, and it's why domestically it's so important, right? And obviously, Ange, that's where he made his name for himself, right? At the Brisbane Roar, where he won that double, the Barcelona, as they called them, 36-game unbeaten run. Like, if you think back to those moments, like Ange in that moment, he would, not in a million years would he ever imagine of him coaching Tottenham to a European trophy. Just unfathomable, right? So, it just goes to show, no matter what country you're from, but that's the other point, right? He's Australian, he's come into it, he's had to prove so many people wrong, and that's going to be the same for whoever comes through, whether that be Muscat or someone else. Despite Ange having now, achieved this success, which is great, there's still going to be questions about, he's Australian. Can he really do it? Is there someone better suited for the job? So we're always going to have this wall that we have to break down, unfortunately, just because of this perception that we're Australian. Football is not our number one sport in this country, but Ange has proven that doesn't matter, right? You have a philosophy, you have a plan, you stick to it, and you can achieve anything.
And I think it's not even proving that to the external people, but seeing someone succeed in something for the first time gives everyone else sort of this like unconscious permission to then go and try to achieve those specific goals as well and those dreams. So people will, I'm sure young coaches or, people who are coming through NPL, coaching youth teams in the A-League, doing whatever, they're all looking at Ange going, oh, okay, Australians can, manage in Europa League finals. They can win major European trophies. And it's so exciting because he's not done. Like, obviously, there's the thing with Tottenham. Do they let him go? Do they keep him? Honestly, in the big picture, does it really matter for Ange? He would love to continue this project, but with the success that he's had, he's going to get an equal job or better. We know he's highly rated in the City football group. How long has Pep Guardiola got left at Manchester City? All of a sudden we're thinking about something like that, and Ange would be a realistic candidate for that. So he's secured his legacy with this win, not just in Australia, that was obviously certain, but now for Tottenham, 100%, he'll always be the guy that broke the drought. And his reputation in Europe is only increasing, and that's exciting. If he stays at Tottenham, he's in Champions League football this year. Obviously, he had a couple of goes with Celtic and wasn't too successful. But with the squad that Tottenham should have and the resource they have with the stadium and everything, and the fact that it's a league phase, so it's a little bit more forgiving, he should absolutely make the knockouts, right, Poletti? And then, it's knockout football. And then, we see Ange, he's used to it because he's Australian. He's played finals and doing the championship. So as big as this moment is, it's even exciting to think that this might not be the limit of what he could do.
Absolutely. And I think the other big question is, do the players stay fit, right? We know that Ange has had to deal with injuries galore. And so hopefully if they can stay fit, they can go on a run, they get themselves maybe straight through to the round of 16. Maybe they have to play the knockout, like little round of 32 or whatever they call it.
The playoff. It's weird.
Playoff. Yeah. Just do it. Anyway, that's not going to talk too much about that. But yeah, and then, as you said, it's knockout football. It's what Ange does. It's what he's done his entire career. They go on a run. But I mean, if they do the Spursy thing and sack him, how quickly do we think that Manchester City are getting on the phone and they're tapping Pep Guardiola?
Not quickly. They'll let Pep do his thing, but after Pep's gone, it'll be a thought. Do
you not tap Pep on the shoulder and
go?
No.
Okay, I'm going to call your A-League snobness out here. No way, that's not happening.
Okay, just ask the question, because like surely if you got the chance to get Ange now, you do it, right? Because who's to say Ange is going to be available again?
Can I add one more thing? Sorry.
Yeah.
So obviously with this Champions League money coming in, they get, I think, around £100 million. So Daniel Levy has a big role to play, right? We know historically, apparently it's somewhere in the region of 100 million just for getting in the Champions League. Plus all the wins. I think it's £5 million pounds per win in the league phase. So yeah, it's massive. I was just going to say, Daniel Levy, massive role to play, because if he continues not to spend money, can Ange really take this squad to the next level? I guess in some ways, yes, because in years past, Ange hasn't had to solely rely on, those big spending transfers, right? He came in, Harry Kane had to be sold, and look what he ended up, finishing 5th place, right? So he's proven in the past, wherever club he's gone, he doesn't need the big name or star signings to get him across the line, which is great compared to someone like Antonio Conte or Jose Mourinho, where in the past have complained endlessly about not having enough funds to, get X, Y, and Z to fit their tactics and their system. So I think that's where Ange can, really thrive, where he doesn't necessarily need that much, backing in terms of the finances to really take this club to the next level. But it would help, though, if Levy did spend a bit more and hopefully buys into this project, which fans have been crying out for years. Why aren't we spending money? We've paid off this new stadium. There should be no excuses now to really establish ourselves as, a really top club.
You've gone slightly overs.
Right?
Sorry, just on the prize money, just to clarify. You've gone a little bit overs. It's 20 million euros for qualification, and then it is 10 if you get to the round of 16. So 30 million. If you imagine they get to the knockouts, 30 million euros, what's that? Maybe 55 maybe Australian million, something like that. So not quite the 100, but it's very significant.
Where'd I get 100 from? Maybe it was Man United. I heard it somewhere.
Maybe if you go all the way, if you're one of these clubs that's won it before, so you have the extra historical win bonuses.
Yeah, it includes ticket sales and all that. I think Man United, they make £5 million per Champions League game. So if you get 5 times 8 league phases, 40 million in the bank. So I think I got that from United. But it's
fair enough. Okay, so 50 million just in prize money and then sponsors and stuff as well. Sure.
Yeah, so it's a lot of money.
Yeah, massive.
Yeah, and honestly, Daniel Levy needs to stick every single cent of that back into Ange's budget, and Ange should, as I said earlier, should rightly ask for it and should get it. And, they can be shrewd with their transfers. They don't need to go and spend the £40 million on a mid-range transfer. They don't need to go and spend £100 million on, a top-class, top 30 player in the world transfer. You could probably get away with a lot of smaller transfers, Ange, I mean, he's from his time in Japan, he scouted Japan incredibly well in terms of the transfers that he made to Celtic. You can go to other parts of the world. It doesn't have to be these European players that they bring in to, that are commanding these high transfer fees,
That's what I'm saying, though. He doesn't need a massive budget. He does need a massive budget.
This literally just needs to be Daniel Levy. Don't be a tight ass. Spend the money and there is a legitimate chance that you're looking at a Champions League quarterfinal next year. And Ange Postecoglou was a few wins away from a Champions League trophy. Like, how heartbreaking as an owner for you was it when, Mauricio Pochettino got absolutely torn to shreds by Liverpool in the Champions League final? That was, 6-7 years ago, I think? You've got a legitimate chance now with a legitimate coach to amend that loss if you back the coach. And honestly, I'll approach it this way. If you're Daniel Levy and you're letting Ange go for whatever reason that you choose, it's your club, it's your money, but you're choosing to let Ange go, who are you bringing in that's as good as, if not better than Ange? I don't know European football all that well. It's well established that I am an A-League snob, but legitimately, who are you bringing in that's as good as, if not better than Ange?
It's
honestly.
all to do with your perception of what the coaches are, right? So, obviously, 17th in the league is a pretty disastrous result. As we said, if he didn't win this final, he didn't come away with the trophy, then it feels like a pretty easy decision. Look, he has to stay. He has to stay. They have to keep him on and let him have a go at Champions League football. Give him a full preseason. As I said, if it's a month or 2 months in and things are still going horribly, then you can say thanks and we'll see you later. But there's just too much momentum swirling in that football club at the moment. Another thing I enjoyed immensely today, Christian, was seeing Vince Rugari go through in his Twitter feed and cash in on all the receipts that he's picked up over the past probably year or so. Obviously, he released Ange Ball a little while ago now. I'm thinking maybe 8 or 9 months ago, something like that. But he's been a big fan of Ange, obviously, and he's been very vocal, talking to people on social media, and just seeing this stream of high profile, like European, like content creators or pundits having a go at Ange over the last year or so, and seeing all those, I guess, naysayers, and we're used to it, right? Seeing Ange being treated this way. I remember that there was that clip from Scottish radio when he first went to Celtic talking about the fact that his AFC badges weren't recognised and not being able to pronounce Postecoglou correctly and just not kind of considering him as the real deal, right? That was it's petty, right? It's petty, but it's so satisfying, that kind of moment to say you were wrong. And it's those kind of iconic words in Australian football that have been repeated a little bit today. The famous Johnny Warren, I told you so.
Yeah, exactly. Vince, he tweeted something out as well after the game. He said something along the lines of, people were wondering what I'd say if Ange lost, but I guess we'll never know, right? Yeah. So I love that one as well. And I saw Max Rushton share his tweet as well, where Vince said, give me a couple of hours just to let it settle down, and then I'll just go hammer in and with these receipts and show these people off. Max is like, yeah, this is great stuff. Go check it out. Which is great because, he's been obviously a big defendant of Ange throughout the whole season. You've had, countless people, really giving him no chance at all to win a trophy, let alone stay in the job before the season, right? It was only in December or January where, the wheels are really starting to fall off, and there was really little hope from a lot of the fan base. And there was this perception, and it is still the case to some extent, that the fans have sort of not been as warm to him compared to at the start of last season, where obviously Ange Ball really kicked in. The fans loved him. They embraced him. It feels like there's still a bit of a divide, but it just goes to show how much a trophy does for a club to galvanise them. It would have been a completely different story, the opposite direction, if he had have lost his final. People would have just been calling for his head. And you just remember the club in 17th place, right? You don't remember it for anything else. So yes, although they've lost 21 games this season, that has to be taken into consideration whilst, Daniel Levy makes this coaching decision. But look, I'm with you. To sort of rip the paper and say, forget about this momentum, we're going to go in a different direction. Tottenham have done that for years on years, and they've been in the same position. Only this time they've actually won a trophy. So make it make sense if they sack him. I know we're being a bit biased because we want him to stay on being an Aussie, but honestly speaking, it really would bewilder me if he doesn't stay on, right? Because, he's won the trophy, he's got them into Champions League football, and let's not forget, he's had a torrid run with injuries. And people will point to the fact that maybe it's his coaching style. Maybe he works the players too hard in training. That's why they get so many soft tissue injuries. But Vince was defending Ange as well, saying, "Look, historically, in my time watching football, I've never seen this occur. Right? It's just something freakish that hopefully will never happen again. And just give him another season, Champions League, see what he can do. Because I think, like I said before, the players are really buying into what he's doing." And if you've got the playing group on your side, then there's no reason why you should sack him.
All right, big Ange. It's a very proud day for Australian football. A very important day. I'm sure it'll go down. It's going to be one of those famous days that is repeated over and over. And very proud to say we got up and well, at least 2 out of the 3 of us watched it live and saw the trophy lift firsthand. So Poletti watched the replay, so it's all good there. Let's head towards the A-League fixtures on the weekend. Of course, we have a small matter of the second leg of the semi-finals to deal with as well. The travelling squads for the weekend have been named. Nothing too much to talk about on an Auckland front. Melbourne Victory, obviously Brandon Hamill confirmed ACL. He was out for the remainder of the season, clearly, and probably the start of next as well. Roderick Miranda is included, but he trained lightly, I believe was the phrase, on Thursday. So he'll be touch and go to play. So that's going to be a question for Melbourne Victory. And Mitch Langrak is still unavailable as well. They said that was always going to be a week by week thing. Honestly, personally, I'm at the point where Jack Duncan is just your keeper now. I don't think even if you made the grand final, why would you really worry unsettling that very, unsettled back four any more than you already have been doing? Nathaniel Atkinson returns from injury from Melbourne City, so it remains to be seen how much he might play, but he is back in the squad. And James Donachie for Western United. So plenty of defensive reinforcements. Poletti, obviously, our main eye will be turned to Auckland versus Victory at 4 p.m. Australian Eastern Time on the Saturday afternoon. That is the one with the most at stake, the Black Knights. Obviously with a 1-goal advantage, but I'm interested to hear if you share my opinion that maybe that will play into the Melbourne Victory mentality and might just get them up to the gear they need to take on Auckland away from home.
As a complete and total neutral throughout this entire final series, I have been going back and forth myself for the last 2 weeks on what is the absolute best scenario here, just from a pure neutral chaos perspective. Is it Auckland, they win the semifinals, they get through to the finals, they win the grand final in their first year, they do what the Wanderers couldn't, they go all the way, or they get to the final, do they lose exactly like the Wanderers did, or do they just get knocked out by Melbourne Victory? And I can't work out which one of those is the absolute funniest scenario, so I don't know what I want. Because I think all of them would be... I just think all of them would be hilarious in their own way.
Yeah, and on the split, it's like... Well, if Auckland win, then we get the grand final at Auckland, and those scenes are going to be insane. But also, if Victory win, we're going to get a Melbourne derby in the final, which we've also never had. So there's those outcomes as well that are very appealing.
Exactly. It's almost like a pick your own adventure as to what's the funniest or the best case scenario in your own mind, and you convince yourself it's going to happen this weekend. Like, unless you're a Western United fan, I think even the most ardent of Western United fans, particularly with some news we're going to probably talk about in about 5 or so minutes time, would have a lot of trouble convincing themselves that they're going to win by 4 goals on Saturday night. It's 3 just to get it to penalties. Like look, can Melbourne Victory do it? Of course they can. Will they do it? I'm not convinced. I think we've seen most teams besides Western United struggle to go into Auckland this year. They played last week, it was 1-0. They played a few weeks ago, it was 2-0 to Auckland. I don't see anyone stopping Auckland en route to the grand final. Melbourne City, I think, have given them a little bit of trouble this year. So if that is indeed the grand final, then perhaps we're looking at a situation where Auckland lose the grand final. But I absolutely think Auckland are going to make the grand final. And my bank account might be a little bit happier if they do, and they might be a little bit happier if they win it.
Gamble responsibly.
Exactly.
Look, Christian, in terms of the subplot of this Auckland victory game, I've enjoyed the little back and forth between the two camps over the last few days. We saw Daniel Arzani come out after the match. He was doing an interview with Paramount, and the line was one-dimensional, the style of Steve Corica's Auckland FC, which, you know, to be fair, one-dimensional, simple, easy to understand. It can be viewed different ways. It's worked pretty well for them so far. And I saw Steve Corica doing his stand-up during the week, responding to those claims. He gave us the classic. I talked about this last week. We're going to put it up on the wall. We're going to remind all the players, you know, and show them what they said. But then there was a moment where they were talking about the goal, and one of Azani's other lines was the fact that De Vries kind of just played in a little bit of a nothing ball for the goal that they did score at Amy Park last week. And Steve Corica's reaction when Daniel Arzani was the man that De Vries beat to be able to get into that pocket of space and find the crossing was quite amusing as well. He was reminded by a reporter that it was Daniel Arzani that De Vries beat, and he had a good laugh to himself as well. So I can't wait to see what Daniel Arzani's reception is from the Port on the weekend. I think he's got some stiff challenges coming his way early in the game, and look, I think that's a fun part of what football is, that kind of the unwritten rules of the game. But also, you got to be careful with a player like Daniel Arzani, because he is one of those guys that can feed off that kind of energy.
Let's hope Arzani puts some useless balls into the box, and hopefully Victory can register a shot on target, unlike what they did in the first leg. That'd help maybe. It's a bit weird, because what do you want Auckland to do, right? Like, that's a way of scoring a goal. They've crossed the ball in, and they've benefited. So I think they are sort of they're funny comments, but Corica, I think, took it well, and he's the type of coach who feeds on that, right? He's going to be nailing that down to his players. He just loves that motivation, to give to his players, to really motivate them. And that'll kick in for this second leg, I'm sure, at home. There'll be a few boos ringing out for Arzani, I'm sure, as well, after those comments. But yeah, I mean, this is the type of game that, look, Arzani, he's got to show up, right? I mean, the first leg was a bit iffy, because before that he was exceptional, and we kept praising him week after week since the Socceroos selection. Where's this Arzani been for the whole season? Like, this is the moment. This is the time where this guy has got to show up in the big moment. He's got to carry Victory on his shoulders when the times are tough, because you expect Victory to have a lot more of the possession, albeit being away from home. Because obviously they've got to take the initiative, right? They have to score, otherwise, obviously they're out. So it all lies on them. Auckland, they're in a comfortable position, right? They don't have to go all guns blazing from minute one. So it's going to be interesting as well how Victory and Arthur Dillis approach this game, especially in the first half, because a 1-0 scoreline isn't the end of the world, right? It's not like it's 3-0 where I was discussing with you and Jacob on the last podcast about Melbourne City and West United. It's a 3-0 scenario for West United and John Aloisi. It's a bit different, right? It's like, when do you sort of go? When do you attack? When do you push numbers forward? I think Victory can take a bit more of a conservative approach, especially in the first half. But it's going to be another intriguing tactical battle, and we saw that throughout large parts of the first leg. I just worry where the goal is going to come from a Victory perspective. Given Auckland's solid defensive structure, it's just so hard to break this team down. And Arzani mentioned they're so one-dimensional, but Jacob touched on it on the last podcast. If they're so one-dimensional, why haven't you found a way to break them down and score goals if it's that easy, right? If it's so predictable. So, obviously Auckland are doing something right, and they're not going to change their approach. They're going to stick to what has worked for them all season long. Corica will nail that down to them as well before the game. And it's going to be a tricky assignment for Victory. But in saying that, given Victory's history, given these moments, these occasions, these big finals games, this is where they show up, right? And to your point, Lockie, that's probably the one edge that you'd give them, the one bit of hope to say, this can be one of those magical nights where we can pull off the unthinkable, albeit it's only 1-0. So expecting not a lot of goals. I don't know about you two, but it should be hopefully a fiery affair.
are going to be live on YouTube, streaming a watch along for that game as well at 4 o'clock Australian Eastern. We'll start streaming a few minutes early, but obviously kickoff is 4 o'clock. That's the big one of the night. We will be tuning off for the Melbourne City Western game. I'm sure we'll all be watching, but
I wonder
we're going to hop
why.
off YouTube for that one. Yeah, look, I am actually on the public record saying that there is a 0% chance that Western United progress out of this tie. So my neck's on the line there a little bit. Look, Melbourne City are one of the best defensive teams in the competition. I know they have the least goals conceded. I think the Auckland 5, the All-Star 5 that are playing at the moment is better than the Melbourne City back four. But obviously they've had to rejiggle a little bit as well. But they're a very solid defensive team. They control the football very well. Look, it is possible. I know I've said it's a 0% chance. They have scored lots of goals against good teams so far. Western United, you can just look at their away trip to Auckland, right? But Melbourne City are a very quality side, and they've improved leaps and bounds since they got a lot of their injuries back. We know that's been the story of their season, but I think Melbourne City, and I reckon victory will have a tilt, but I can't look past Auckland in terms of progressing to the grand final, which is, of course, just over a week away as well. We're going to let's tackle it now. Western United. So we have some news from them as well. Obviously, there's been lots of off-field discussion about their future as a football club. We talked about them potentially owing a fair bit of money, and then this FIFA ban for 3 windows of transfers, and they can't register new players. Then we heard the encouraging news about the takeover of this new group to take over the Western Melbourne group and all the property development as well as the football club out there in Tarneet. And on Thursday, we've learnt through, I think it was reports from Marco Monteverde and Joey Lynch as well for their respective outlets, that the PFA have lodged notices with Western United to pay outstanding player payments. So this is a 2-week time frame that the PFA have allowed. I'm sure there's rules and regulations which dictate those kind of time frames as well. But this is kind of an acceleration of the crisis that Western United are dealing with at the moment, Poletti. We've kind of been operating on this theory that with the new owners coming in and investing what we understand to be around about $100 million, there is obviously a fair bit of wealth there, and these kind of minor issues, I think it was even just 55,000 was the first one that triggered the FIFA ban, but this is probably growing on that a little bit, that those kind of numbers would be easily dealt with the new owners, but it's hard for the new owners to do much, at least with the easiest possible means, if they haven't gone through all the checks and balances that actually make them owners of the football club.
Yeah, this is honestly, I couldn't believe it when I saw all of this, because it's not just the fact that it's covering the men's team as well, it's covering the women's team as well, and we've well documented, the disparity in financial investment in women's football in this country. The salary cap is only $600,000. If you're missing player payments on a $600,000 salary cap, what on earth are you doing as a football club? Like, I mean, it's $3 million roughly, I think, on the men's side. I know it, depending on marquee and homegrown talent and all of that, but like that's sort of the number you're looking at. So like, and I understand it's prorated throughout the year, but like if you're missing player payments on that small of an amount, relatively speaking, obviously, that's $3 million is probably more than I'll ever see in my lifetime. But relatively speaking, like if you're missing payments on that, what are you doing as a football club? Like, how are you like this broke? And I think that's probably the only word I can use to describe it. How are you this broke? And I mean, on the owner's front, like I understand it's got to go through, a foreign investment check and all of that. Do you not speak to these owners and go, so I put this in our group chat earlier today and go, look, we need X amount of money. Can you lend that to us in the short term, and we'll knock that plus a little bit of interest off, the final amount. So if we were going to sell you the club for $50 million, we'll take it down to, 48.7, or we'll take it down to 47.5, depending on what the actual amount or number is that they need, instead of, the full 50 million. Because otherwise you're looking at a situation where you've already got, I think it's 9 men's players coming off contract at the end of this season. You've got 13 due off contract next season. The women's game is a little bit different because those player contracts are only 9 or 10 months of the year. So you potentially got the entire squad coming off contract there. Who, how many players walk away? Do they, regardless of whether they get their money now, how many of them try to force their way out of the club? How many want to re-sign next year if they're off contract this year? And then I think perhaps most importantly, if it takes a while for these, for these owners to get, put through them, I'm no expert in legal matters. That is a Jacob department. But my understanding from a brief Google is that sometimes these, foreign investment review board checks can take years to go through before things are actually settled. Like, are you looking at a situation then where, okay, you've got this sorted in the short term, but if the ownership doesn't change, who would actually want to go play for Western United next year if they've literally just seen, if the numbers of what we're seeing are true, a significant amount of the player base having to basically put in their 2 weeks notice and going, yeah, you pay us or we're out. Like, who wants to put themselves in a situation like that unless, you're in a financial position where you can afford to maybe go 2 months without a paycheck?
My read on this is that it's a lot of delaying from the current ownership and hoping they maybe just don't have to deal with it and they can get this deal over the line. You're right. Those reviews can take... Look, it's a very wide range of time. It could be done in the next couple of weeks. It could take years. Hopefully for what they're doing, the time frame doesn't click with the years, right? So hopefully that is not the case. Look, there's quotes here from Dylan Leonard who faced the press, who talked about this issue. The quote says, "The boys know that we're going to get paid at the end. It doesn't matter. But regardless of that, it's not often you get to play in a semi-final." So very quickly trying to change the tune away, which is understandable for a young player that probably isn't too experienced in these matters. But from what it reads to me is that the PFA is simply putting on the clock. You're saying you've delayed. And we talked about some of the owners delaying some of their other debts as well a couple of weeks ago. It feels like we're just setting the clock and saying, okay, this is getting a little bit silly now. We're going to pay... we're going to set the date for you. And I don't have any strong beliefs that this will affect the club long term. Obviously, like talking about their reputation in terms of players, if they do transition to new ownership, then in theory, at least that reputation hopefully goes away with it. But yes, certainly no great news coming out of Western United at the moment, but hopefully that is soon to change. The other A-League club that we need to make mention of, because there was an absolute banger scored in midweek, Christian, Melbourne City playing in the semi-finals of the Asian Women's Champions League over in China at the moment. They were deadlocks at 0-0. It looked like it was going to extra time. Poletti was absolutely furious about it, didn't want another 30 minutes of football. But out comes an absolute rocket to win the game for Melbourne City and take them to the final of the inaugural Asian Women's Champions League.
Yeah, Shelby McMahon. What is the 94th minute? Absolute top bins guy. I saw it when I woke up in the morning before, watching the Spurs game. And I thought, Poletti touched on it before the podcast. Can't go through another extra time and penalties. I mean, just get it over and done with. And they got over the line eventually. And yeah, a massive result for Australian football as well to reach, a final in Asia. I mean, that's obviously significant. And it's just a shame what happened domestically with the Mariners and the whole offside issue. Like they could have made something special of this season. Like they really could have. But I mean, look, Poletti obviously, watched the game from start to finish. It was a tough game by the looks of it, and the stats.
Oh yeah, it was absolutely a tough game.
And it goes to show that, like, from an Australian perspective, like in the women's game, I can speak on it for myself. Like these clubs abroad, they're not really in the limelight, so we probably take it a bit for granted to say, okay, Melbourne City are going to steamroll this team. For those who don't have a general knowledge of, women's football in Asia, in Japan, Korea, all these different countries. So it goes to show that there's a lot of competition around in these regions. That's the same with the men as well, which we've known now obviously for some time. So for Melbourne City to get this result, pull that off away from home that's extraordinary.
I mean, Incheon, what was that, sorry?
Can they go on and win it?
I I think they can. So Incheon, who they face, Incheon Red Angels, this was the same side that beat Sydney FC 3-0 last year in, the Women's Club Championship or whatever the AFC were calling it, the precursor to the Women's Champions League. This is one of the better sides, or one of the best sides in South Korea. Melbourne City. We talked about Sydney FC on the men's side of things in the ACL too. Being handed a path through to the final. Urawa got knocked out in the quarterfinals. This was, and then as soon as I saw that they'd been drawn here against Incheon, I was like, okay, they could legitimately just get knocked out in the semi-final here. Like this was a serious game, and I think it shows by the fact they were deadlocked at 0-0 in the 94th minute, and it literally took a one-off goal, direct quote from Shelby McMahon, to do it. An absolute, strike from over 25 yards out to get the success. They've got certainly an easier opponent in the final in Wuhan Jiangda. I'm not going to pretend like I'm too much of an expert on Chinese women's football, but a lot of people who I have a lot of respect for in women's football were basically looking at this as the final before the final, and the winner of this was going to be in the box seat to do it. Melbourne City have done that. So, yeah, I think they can do it, and I think they will do it. I think we are looking at history being made. I think we are looking at a $2 million Australian dollar payday for the Melbourne City women's side, and the players will get a significant portion of that. The portion of which I believe is, I think it's close to $1 million, so I think they get half of it, which, as we've already established, the salary cap is $600,000. This is more than they would get in an entire season to split amongst the player base.
Can I put a suggestion in? Can they split that money with the league, or just give it to the APL? Can they invest in VAR, maybe, in the VAR system? Can they do that? Maybe is that considering what happened to them in the semi-finals?
If you bring up VAR in the A-League women one more time, Christian, I will get on a flight to Melbourne with money I don't have, and I'll take you up behind the shed.
I've hooked Poletti again. I've hooked Poletti on the rod.
Yes. I got the bait. I got the bait.
Can I also add one more thing? I saw Anna Harrington. Apparently, she caught up with McMahon, got a quote after the game, and she's still studying. Like, she's doing her homework, studying, and then to score a goal, it just goes to show, like, it's an unbelievable story.
I mean, she's 17 years old, Shelby McMahon. She literally just had her 17th birthday a few days ago. Just before this time last year, she hadn't even had her 16th birthday yet, and it was her strike against Perth that sealed the Premier's plate for the Mariners, which got them into this tournament. So her fingerprints have been all over City's Champions League run, and it's paying dividends. As I said, I think they can win it. I think they will win it. I think we are looking at history for Australian football. They will forever go down as the inaugural winners of the Asian Women's Champions League. With where women's football is at, I think there is a solid chance that Melbourne City can set themselves up for a dynasty with just how well resourced they are within, the landscapes of Australian and Asian football.
Very good. All right, that game, the final against Wuhan, is 10 o'clock on Saturday evening. So after you've tuned off from the A-League men's semi-finals, the Women's Champions League final will be on, I believe it is 10 play as well, right, Poletti?
Yes, it's 10 play, and it's AFC YouTube channel worldwide. It is geo-blocked for Australian audiences. I tried last night. So it is geo-blocked for Australian audiences, so you will have to watch it through 10 play.
Very good. Good luck to them. All right, finally for today, the under-20 squad, the men's national team, has been selected for 2 friendly games against Argentina in Buenos Aires coming up in a few weeks' time. Now, this is particularly interesting because of the headline inclusion, Christian, which is Nestori Irankunda. Obviously, the position of him in probably 3 different national team squads has been up in the air for a little while now. We know he missed the whole under-23 run. He didn't play the under-20 Asian Cup either, obviously being playing where he was over in Switzerland was more valuable. I'm assuming the club just didn't release him as well. But him being included in this squad for me is a clear sign to say that he'll probably be playing in the Under-20 World Cup later on in Chile this year, which is really, really exciting. And there's a number of names in there as well that, again, clubs didn't release for the Under-20 Asian Cup, but I think there's 7 also of those kind of high-profile European players that we are adding in to a team that were continental champions a few months ago. So really exciting. They get to go and play a couple of friendlies against Argentina, who are obviously going to be part of the competition in this World Cup.
Yeah, great news. I mean, we've always been, big advocates for Irankunda making these types of squads, but it's funny because wasn't the argument that he wasn't making these squads to protect him? Now all of a sudden he's supposed to be the main man to guide him in an under-20 World Cup. It's a bit of like a flip-flop scenario, but hopefully he does well because ever since this loan move, apparently he's been doing well from all accounts, and obviously deserves this opportunity with the national team because it has been frustrating for him at times, especially with the senior squad. I think there's been a couple of selections where he's probably scratched his head and thought, okay, what else can I do? Right? I've been touted as this next big thing in Australian football and I can't even get a look in. So that surely has fueled him that extra bit to hopefully prove Popovic wrong and try and maybe knock on the door as it gets closer to the 2026 World Cup. So I don't know, I'm still leaving the door open for that. But in the meantime, it's just good that he's playing some international football, whatever level it may be, just for his development in general. Hopefully he can, really take the tournament by the scruff of the neck. We know he's got the talent. And just with the names that are on this list in the rundown in the squad, I mean, just talent's endless. We've seen it, in a couple of years now, the amount of, good quality players that are actually coming through the ranks, which is just great to see. So hopefully they all stay fit and healthy and Australia can go on a deep run.
People should be very excited about this upcoming Under-20 World Cup. You look at the names that we have here, go and Google this one and compare them to the Under-23 squad and tell me which one you feel more excited about. Because I'm looking down this list of the names of exciting A-League talent and some that have already moved on. The likes of Alex Badalato, who's at Melbourne Victory now and was the player of the tournament at the Under-20 World Cup. You got Max Caputo scoring goals and probably getting a move overseas from Melbourne City. You got Franz Deli, Sebastian Esposito, who's just been called up late to the Socceroos training camp. Josh Insera, Nestor Irankunda, of course. Luka Jovanovic, Wataru Kamijo, who's broken into a Sydney FC midfield that is absolutely stacked. Paniotis Kikianis, that apparently to some football observatory is worth like $7 million or something. Paul Oken Exler, who's also been called up to the Socceroos. Jalen Pearman, who's getting a move to QPR. Dylan Perech Cullen, Tiago Quintal. There's so many very, very exciting names in this list. So to see them go and take on Argentina, surely, I don't really know about the under-20s at Argentina, but they have to be one of the best under-20 teams in the world, right? You'd think they'd be pretty close. That's the kind of competition they're going to get at this Under-20 World Cup. So super exciting age group, and we look forward to covering them because they'll be kind of just on the edge of the national second-tier A-League season as we get towards the end of that kind of off-season there. So we'll be excited to cover that. Finally, for today, Poletti, we're kind of leaving most of our transfer news. We'll catch up on that next week, but you wanted a quick word on Josh Cavallo departing from Adelaide United.
Yeah, look, I felt it was important that I say something, especially since I'm not a regular here on the Roundball Australia podcast, just because other commitments, and plenty of our other panelists all, have a lot more availability than I do. So I figured I'd say something while I've got the chance. What Josh Cavallo has done for not just for Australian football, but for queer people in sport in Australia is nothing short of extraordinary. One of the rare or one of the few openly gay men's footballers around the world, not just Australia, but around the world. Everything he's done, everything he's had to go through has been nothing short of extraordinary. The inspiration that he gives to so many people in sport in this country is nothing short of amazing. I've had the pleasure to meet Josh a couple of times. Lovely person, has always got time for everyone, that approaches him with genuine and good intent. The abuse that he's had to cop is absolutely horrid. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. He hasn't always had the easiest run at Adelaide with injury, and has spent quite a lot of time out of the lineup because of those injuries. But he will be missed, not only in Adelaide, but to plenty of queer people in sport in Australia, just because of what he's done. he is heading overseas for an opportunity, which Adelaide, is mutual. Everyone's wishing everyone the best of luck there. And so wherever Josh Cavallo goes next, I genuinely hope he gets a chance to succeed and stays fit and show the world what he can do, because he absolutely deserves that opportunity.
All right, that'll do for this episode of the Round Ball Australia podcast. Bit of a European twist on this one, Christian, but we don't mind it when Big Ange is involved.
Oh, quite enjoyed it. Obviously, we're going to have more ideas in the off-season once the A-League's done. So, yeah, might have to tap into a bit more of the European scope. Who knows?
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Poletti, thank you as well.
You can count me out of that.
All right, we won't invite you to those episodes. But thank you very much to everyone listening at home. As always, we appreciate your company. We'll be back on Tuesday to review the final legs, get rid of them, of the two semi-finals in the A-League men's competition. And of course, by then we'll know our grand final teams, which will be very exciting as well. Don't forget the live stream on YouTube, 4 p.m. on Saturday afternoon for the Victory Auckland game. We'll see you there. But if not, we'll see you on Tuesday. Thank you. Thanks again. There you go, for listening to the Round Ball Australia podcast. Goodbye.